For nearly a century, the US dollar has been more than paper and ink. It has been a symbol of control, an invisible empire stretching across oceans, markets, and mines. Every barrel of oil, every cargo ship, every nation's debt, all tied to the green note bearing the promise of the United States. But empires built on trust can crumble in silence. And from the east to the south, a quiet resistance has begun. The race for the new world currency begins where all power stories do, with dominance disguised as stability. After World War II, the world was broken and bankrupt. Nations needed order. America had both money and might. At the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944, delegates from 44 countries agreed to anchor their currencies to the dollar and the dollar to gold. The United States, holding most of the world's gold, became banker to the planet. For decades, it worked. The dollar was more than currency. It was confidence. Factories rebuilt, trade revived. Nations trusted the system because it was predictable, and America, back then, seemed unshakable. But by the late 1960s, the illusion began to fray. Wars were expensive, inflation grew, and other nations started converting their dollars back into gold faster than the US could dig it up. In 1971, President Nixon made a move that would change global finance forever. He closed the gold window. The dollar was no longer backed by anything tangible. It floated, free, supported only by belief. Most thought the system would collapse. It didn't. Instead, America struck a quiet deal with Saudi Arabia. Oil would be sold only in dollars. In return, the US would guarantee the kingdom's security. Every nation that needed oil now needed dollars. The petrodollar was born, and with it, the second life of the American empire. For the next half-century, the dollar became the bloodstream of world trade. From European bonds to African ports, from Asian megacities to Latin America's markets, every transaction flowed through US banks. Sanctions became weapons, and financial systems turned into fortresses. The dollar wasn't just money anymore. It was leverage. But behind that dominance lay a question too many ignored. What happens when the rest of the world decides it's had enough? The world changed, but the system didn't. As the 20th century faded, new powers rose from the ashes of old empires. China's factories became the world's engine. India's population exploded into a digital workforce. Brazil and South Africa emerged with resources the world needed. Yet every deal, every barrel, every shipment still flowed through the dollar. Then came 2008. The crisis that began in American banks rippled across continents. Mortgage defaults in one country became recessions in 20. Trillions of dollars printed overnight saved Wall Street but punished everyone holding US debt. For emerging nations, it felt like being passengers on a ship whose captain had fallen asleep at the wheel. The message was clear. The world's reserve currency was only as safe as the politics behind it. When America sneezed, the world caught pneumonia. And so, quietly at first, nations began to ask, what if we built our own system? The idea wasn't new, but the will was. The more Washington used the dollar to punish enemies through sanctions, trade bans, and financial blacklists, the more those enemies looked for an escape hatch. Russia, Iran, China, they all learned the same lesson. If the dollar can be weaponized, then money itself has become a battlefield. Across the developing world, central bankers began experimenting. Trade deals signed in local currencies. Gold reserves quietly rebuilt. Currency swaps between partners who once depended on the Federal Reserve's mercy. The restlessness spread faster than anyone expected. A rebellion not of guns, but of spreadsheets. And out of that rebellion, an alliance began to take shape, one that claimed it would give the world a new way to trade, not through domination, but through cooperation. Its name was BRICS, BRICS. At first, it sounded like an economist's acronym. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. 5 nations from different continents, different systems, united by one frustration: dependence. Together, they held almost half of the world's population, a quarter of its GDP, and nearly 2/3 of its resources. Separately, they were regional powers. Together, they could be something more: a counterweight. In 2014, they built their first monument, the New Development Bank. It wasn't just another bank. It was a statement, a challenge to the IMF and the World Bank, both long seen as tools of Western control. Loans without political strings, they said. A financial system built by the Global South for the Global South. But behind the polished speeches was a deeper goal, one that few dared to say out loud: to one day launch a shared currency backed by real assets: oil, gas, gold, and grain. A currency that could trade globally without touching a single US bank. If it succeeded, the dollar's century-long reign could begin to fade. China, already testing digital versions of its yuan, became the engine. Russia, under sanctions, the spark. India and Brazil, the balancing voices trying to keep ambition from turning into domination. And South Africa, the moral anchor, reminding the world that independence begins with choice. One by one, small victories arrived. Oil sold in yuan, trade financed in rupees, energy pipelines built that never touched Western insurance. It was still tiny compared to the dollar's ocean, but the waves had started. The BRICS currency doesn't exist yet, but the movement behind it does. And in global finance, belief always comes before reality. Because the moment enough people believe there's an alternative, the system begins to tilt. For every vision of a new order, there's the weight of reality. The BRICS alliance may speak with one voice on stage, but behind closed doors, it's a room filled with competing agendas. China wants leadership. Russia wants survival. India wants independence. And Brazil and South Africa want trade without choosing sides. 5 nations, 5 different dreams, all trying to share one currency. And that's the paradox. To build a stable financial system, you need trust. But trust can't be printed, mined, or decreed. It has to be earned. The United States didn't dominate the world just by luck. It had the world's deepest markets, the strongest institutions, and the one thing every investor craves: predictability. A new currency would have to offer all of that without a single central authority. The dollar's power comes from the network it controls: SWIFT, Visa, MasterCard, global banking rails built over decades. To replace it, BRICS must build an entire parallel world of finance, from clearinghouses to trust systems. It's like trying to replace the heart of the global economy while it's still beating. And yet, despite the obstacles, the cracks are widening. Every sanction, every trade war, every American default threat pushes another country to question the system. Every question is another fracture. And fractures, over time, reshape the world. But while politicians argue about paper money, technology is already rewriting the rules. Digital currencies, the next frontier in the battle for control. Not crypto in the chaotic, borderless sense, but state-backed digital cash, programmable and trackable. China leads the race. Its digital yuan isn't just a payment system, it's a geopolitical tool. Trade in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East is already settling through Chinese digital platforms. No banks, no dollars, no permission required. India, Russia, and even Saudi Arabia are testing their own versions. A silent race to see who can build the infrastructure for tomorrow's economy first. The irony is that digital currencies promise freedom, but they come with surveillance built in. If money becomes code, then whoever controls the code controls the economy. In this new world, dominance isn't measured by how much gold you hold, but by who writes the algorithms that move it. The US isn't sitting idle. Washington is quietly exploring a digital dollar, trying to defend its crown before it's taken. But the very thing that gave America global influence, a free and open financial system, now makes it harder to control. The dollar's strength lies in being everywhere. Its weakness is the same. And as the digital tide rises, the world faces a question no one has answered yet. In a future where every nation issues its own digital currency, who decides what money is worth? For now, the dollar still wears the crown. Almost 60% of global reserves are held in it. Most trade contracts are written in it. Even countries that resent its power still rely on it to survive. But history is patient, and empires don't fall overnight. They fade, quietly, while pretending to stand tall. The British pound once ruled the world, carried on warships and trade routes that spanned continents. By the time the Second World War ended, it was finished, replaced by the same dollar that now stands in the crosshairs. The signs of fatigue are here. Rising debt, shrinking trust, a political system that seems more divided by the day. And abroad, allies hedging their bets, signing side deals in currencies they once dismissed. For decades, the dollar wasn't just money. It was American credibility made tangible. But credibility, like currency, is only as strong as the faith behind it. And faith is fragile. The future might not belong to a single replacement. It could be a web of regional powers, Asia using the yuan, the Middle East trading in digital dinars, Africa building its own payment rails. A fragmented world where money reflects geography more than ideology. Or maybe the next global currency won't even belong to a nation. Maybe it will be digital, decentralized, a neutral medium powered by code and consensus instead of guns and governments. If that sounds impossible, remember, so did a world ruled by green paper 100 years ago. The truth is simple, but unsettling. Whoever controls the currency controls the story. And for the first time in living memory, that story is being rewritten. The race for the new world currency isn't about greed. It's about control. Who sets the rules, who bears the cost, and who gets to stay immune when the rest of the world trembles. Money has always been a mirror of power. And when the reflection changes, so does the order of the world. Somewhere in Beijing, a minister watches digital transactions flow across screens in real time. In Moscow, an economist signs a deal that avoids the dollar altogether. In Delhi, analysts calculate how much longer they can balance between empires. And in Washington, policymakers ask a question their predecessors never had to. What happens when the world finds another option? No one knows when that moment will come. Next decade, next generation, or in a sudden storm of crisis. But history moves quietly until it doesn't. And when the old order breaks, it never announces it. It simply stops working. Until then, the dollar stands. Still powerful, still everywhere, but no longer unchallenged. This is the new great game. Not fought with armies or ideology, but with code, commodities, and currencies. The world is changing its money, and with it, its masters.